Welcome back to the Reinvented Legal Business, the case studies series. Really delighted to welcome Lacuna Legal Providers to this series today. As you know, the series is focused on talking candidly about the evolution of legal businesses that are doing things differently and the people behind those businesses who generously in this series, and I'm sure this will be no different, provide amazing tips that you can take away, and also tend to highlight the traps that you need to avoid so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So really delighted to have you today, Bronwyn, Allison and Gemma. I know you're going to introduce yourselves in a little bit more detail shortly, so I'm going to leave that aspect of it to you, if I may. Again, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the folks from Lacuna Legal Providers. And I will disappear for a little bit, but I will definitely be coming back. Welcome again, Bronwyn, Allison and Gemma. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Terry. Hi, Terry, Christine and CLI. Thanks so much for inviting us to be part of ReinventED. We're very excited to be here. Thank you also to those who have given up their Friday lunchtime to join us on today's online seminar. I'm Bronwyn Lewis, and I'm here with my colleagues Allison Warburton and Gemma Corey, who are two of my favourite people in the world. So I'm having a very nice Friday. Allison is a co-founder of Lacuna Legal Providers. She's also a commissioner at the Australian Energy Market Commission, and she was a partner at Minter Ellison for 18 years, which is where Allison and I first crossed paths. Gemma joined us at Lacuna in November last year, although it seems much longer in a good way. Prior to that, Gemma has a long history of working in law firms, Big Four accountants, and also with financial institutions, both here and in the UK. And Gemma is a bid and key message and content specialist. So she's been kept very busy since she joined us at Lacuna. I'm also a co-founder of Lacuna Legal Providers and a lawyer admitted here in Queensland and also in New York. I haven't practiced for many years, but I realised putting this together that I've been around law firms for more than 25 years now. So we're still working with law firms, just using different models and across different types of law firms all at once rather than in individual firms. I've worked here in Australia and internationally, based in Hong Kong, and I've worked in some of the biggest law firms both here and overseas. But I also started out in a really small practice on the Sunshine Coast here in Queensland, which had the best view in the world. Most importantly, I'm a mum to 3 teenage children, as Gemma has 2 children and Alison also has 2, so we have quite a brood across us actually. I put those numbers together. We all have large family, friends and commitments outside of work, and they're important to us. Because it's International Dog Day, I'm also going to mention that Gemma has 2 fur babies. I have 3 and Alison has 1. So busy lives. It still seems a little bit surreal to us that it's nearly 2.5 years have passed since we launched Lacuna. It's more than 3 years since Allison and I walked away from our roles in big law to see what this little idea of ours could be in the real world. There's no doubt in my mind it's been the best thing I've done, but it's not been without its challenges, and we're happy to talk about those as we go. Lacuna works with clients across Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. There are currently 3 of us in the business, but we're recruiting at the moment, and we'll have another 2 people hopefully join us in the next month or so. That we are where we are is no doubt due to the hard work we've all put in, but it's also due to the support and generosity of the people we've met along the way and the family and friends who've supported us and referred work to us. Terry, you and the Centre for Legal Innovation have been extremely significant in our success so far, so we wanted to start by thanking you for your support and wise counsel. We encourage anybody who's on this call who's thinking about doing something different in the legal sphere to make sure you've got Terry and CLI in your corner. It will be invaluable. So we're happy for today to be a discussion. So please feel free to ask questions, as Terry indicated earlier. Raise your hand, send through the questions, and Terry will moderate those. We do have a prepared talk in case we don't get any questions, but we're happy to divert from that at any time. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about Lacuna's purpose. Allison will talk about how we came to be. Gemma will then talk through the types of clients we work with and the services we provide. And we'll talk a little bit about the problems we set out to solve for lawyers and professionals. So to get started, at the heart of everything we do at Lacuna is provide support for lawyers so they can focus on their work for their clients and building their business, the things that only they can do. Our purpose is to help all lawyers who engage us, no matter how they practice, to build and have successful and sustainable careers and successful and sustainable lives. At a high level, we deliver business development, marketing services, but we also see ourselves as a bit of a concierge. When a problem lands on a desk and someone needs it solved, we're the people they call. Now, it may be a problem that we can solve for them. It may be a problem where we have to call in other experts to help solve it. Or it may just be a problem they can solve themselves. They just want someone else to bounce it around with. So, as my granny used to say, we work on the philosophy that a problem shared is a problem solved. And so Allison will now talk to you a little bit about how Lacuna came to be.
Thanks, Bron. Well, like all great ideas, the genesis of Lacuna was really born out of our shared frustration that law practices just weren't evolving to keep pace with the lives of the lawyers who worked in them. We'd had long careers in large law firms, and those careers had been really rewarding for us in terms of the training that we'd received, the work opportunities, and the fabulous people that we had met along the way. But as Bron said earlier, we were also parents of school-aged children, and professional service firms can be very demanding places. And at different times, each of us felt the incredible strain of meeting those competing demands in our lives. And when we looked around, we saw that we weren't the only ones feeling the strain. And we watched as people we knew who were great at their jobs, who'd spent years honing their skills, started to walk away from private practice just because it became all too hard. And we rarely ever saw them come back. So we wanted to offer lawyers another option, another way to manage their careers. And in really practical terms, Lacuna is about providing business support services. We deliver the physical tasks like business development help and secretarial help. But in concept, it's about providing choice for lawyers and giving them a way to work differently so that they can have more space in their lives but still keep their careers on track. And Bron and I told this story of our why when we first launched Lacuna a few years back, and Gemma was there as well. And we'd invited a group of our work colleagues and friends to a bit of a soft launch function. And I can still remember their responses, which were almost completely divided down the gender lines. So the women in the room were all nodding and there was affirmation and acknowledgement. And many of the men were just a little bit amused. They were happy to sort of wish us well with the project, but didn't quite understand why we were doing it. And we asked ourselves afterwards, why don't they get it? And so we went looking for the data just to sort of, do a bit of a self-check and see if our experiences were actually representative. And we happened across the graph, which hopefully you can see on your screen, which we found very interesting. So this graph shows the weekly hours that fathers and mothers spend in employment, on parenting, childcare, and on household chores. So the y-axis at the left is the hours and the x-axis at the bottom is the age of the youngest child. So I'm giving you a little bit of time to have a look at that because it's almost, you've got to get into a graph a bit. The pink line is showing you hours in employment. The blue line is showing you hours spent on childcare and parenting. And the orange line shows you the hours spent on housework. And you can see the very dramatic impact that having a child has on careers. So those results are pretty confronting for our modern workforce. And what they tell us is that we have to find new ways of supporting both women and men to have more balanced work and family lives. So that's a bit about why Lacuna came to be. Now I'm going to hand over to Jem to talk about how we can help.
Sure, okay. Well, the first thing I want to address is who we help. So we help lawyers who are practicing in many different ways. We work with, as you can see on the left, a number of lawyers working in different areas of the industry. So we work with big law, we work with mid-tier firms. Typically, we'll work with mid-tier firms to deliver senior marketing and business development support. We work with boutique firms, often to help deliver marketing, BD, and communications plans. We also work with sole practitioners regularly to help build their businesses and their profile. And often we work with sole practitioners not only to develop their plans, but also to act as an accountability check. So making sure that they're doing what they say they're going to be doing. We also work with individual lawyers, both as in-house counsel, those in private practice, and as I mentioned before, sole practitioners to deliver coaching and career planning advice. However, beyond that, we also work with professionals who are not lawyers. And this has included everyone from people who are looking for their next challenge, CEOs potentially looking for their next career move, people leaving big law and starting up on their own, or people who are just looking for a complete career change. Additionally, we work with other professional services providers, and particularly those that are servicing the legal profession. It's a market that we know, so we generally help them do things like design their marketing and business development strategies. So in understanding who we work with, I'd now like to talk about the type of services that we provide and how we provide them. So given that we're working with professionals in many different ways, we do also provide many different services just that are tailored to our client specific needs at any point in time. So we provide things such as we mentioned, marketing, business development, client relationship management strategies, pricing, policies and procedures, secretarial support, HR support, law firm startup, so on. So in a nutshell, we provide the services that you would ordinarily expect to find in a large firm. In engaging with our clients, or in engaging Lacuna, our clients get direct access to Allison, Bronwyn, and myself, and can draw on each of our individual expertise as and when needed. Bronwyn mentioned before, where our clients need support outside of our specific skill sets, we've developed a network of trusted providers who can be brought in at appropriate times to assist. As the circumstances of all of our clients are unique, we also tailor our delivery models to suit. So you'll see at the top there our 3 different delivery models. There is no one-size-fits-all approach with us. And our clients can work with us in whichever way suits them, whether that be on a monthly retainer basis, project-based, or ad hoc on an hourly rate. So, for example, we find that we typically work with our mid-tier and boutique clients on a monthly retainer basis. So we work for a defined number of hours per week or month, acting as an outsourced function, and often at their premises, a couple of days or a day or so a week. We also work on a project or specific campaign basis, for example, a specific tender opportunity, to prepare directory or award submissions, or a website or social media review. Bron will go into a little bit more detail about this shortly, but many of our clients will also come to us on an ad hoc basis at particular times in their career, often for coaching or just to have a trusted sounding board. We always maintain a level of flexibility to ensure that we're providing the right level of support in the right areas at the right time. So our delivery models generally enable our clients to either dial up or dial down our services at different times, depending on what they need, or even just dip in or dip out. I'm going to hand over to Bronwyn now, who will speak to you about coaching.
Thanks, Jem. So executive coaching is one of the services we provide here at Lacuna, and it's probably the one that I'm really quite passionate about. I've been coaching since 2011, and I'm in the process of finalising my accreditation for the first level of the International Coaching Federation. I have many examples of how actually being a coachee, being someone that's coached, has helped me make major decisions in my life and move forward. The service is important to me because I know from my own experience and from the experience of others that working in a law firm, whether you're working as a lawyer or as a support professional, can be really lonely. And that's whether you're working in sort of big law firms, mid-tier boutique practices, or as a sole practitioner. There's a constant striving to achieve in law, and we find it can drive a confidence crisis at different points in people's careers. I think nearly everybody has had a confidence crisis at some time. For some, it's driven by not getting a role that you wanted or not getting the promotion you deserved. It can come up when there's a quiet period at work and you're not sure how you're going to fill your timesheet. It can happen when you return to work after a period of leave to care for family. Or sometimes it happens when people are told that they need to go and build a client base and they've not been given the tools, the framework, or the training to develop the skills they need to do that. And what happens is we find that people begin to feel quite isolated. And once confidence starts slipping, it's a slippery slope and it can be hard to know where to turn. So I have this theory since I've left the firm. I wasn't aware of it when I was in there, but I have a theory that firms, traditional law firms, are run on a mentality of scarcity. And it's all about thinking, you know, where's my next job coming from? Where's my next client coming from? And where will I find that next billable hour? And I think it's because every day you start again from zero. You start again to fill the timesheet every single day. Every month you have to fill a budget. And it always feels like you're striving to achieve something that can be quite unattainable. So what I find really strange about that is even in the world we're living in, even in the world of COVID-19, we're living in one of the most abundant times in history. And there was a headline just this morning telling us that law firm profit margins had hit 37% and that Australian firms had outperformed their counterparts in the US, UK and Asia. So this mentality of scarcity is happening in one of the most abundant times in the world, in history. And people are working out that they don't necessarily want to work that way anymore. So coaching is a safe space for them to talk through what their options are, what's happening in their career. And they can talk without judgment. They can talk with people who understand law firms and have been part of that existence. They can talk with people who will challenge their mindset, support initiatives, and remind people, because sometimes people do need reminding that they didn't get where they are by being a failure, even if that's how they're feeling. It helps to have some coaching when you're looking to change careers or other important milestones are happening. And I think what you get out of it is it's a space to sit in and really sit with issues and decisions and work your way forward, because in our busy lives, it's easy to push those things to the back of your mind. This was certainly my own experience with being coached, and I hope it's the experience of some of the coachees that I work with. So often clients come to Lacuna and they start out with a coaching package, and once they've worked out what they're going to do next, sometimes they'll continue the coaching, they'll hire us for some ad hoc projects, or sometimes we become part of the plan that they move forward with. So with that, I thought we'd just pause, Terry, and check in with you and see if there's any questions or anything anybody would like to ask us so far.
Absolutely. And folks, just going to remind you, if I may, to throw those questions into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen if you would like to pose some questions. I'm going to ask you a question while people are thinking about that, if I may, because, you know, I love to ask the questions, and it's just such a fabulous story to ask questions about. As I was listening to you explain and chat about your history, and also, you know, what you folks focus on, I was kind of thinking that there's almost a tagline in there for you that, and I'm focusing just on the legal world that you support at the moment, and I know it's much broader than that, but, you know, you're really supporting lawyers in the business of law so that they can focus on the practice of law. And you can have that, by the way. You're welcome to it if you want to use it. But the question in it is this: have you seen, as the business has evolved, kind of a mindset shift? Because there used to be almost a reluctance to outsource to people like you, your businesses, the sort of work that you do, to the extent that you have obviously peers and the sort of stuff that you do. But it seems that that's really gone through a bit of a change, and people are much more comfortable with that and much more willing to engage with folks such as yourselves. Is that true? Have you kind of seen that in your own journey so far?
Yes, we certainly have, but I would still say it's a bit of a slow burn. Over the last 2.5 years, I'd say most people, they're sort of, unless they have an immediate project they need our help with, I think there's probably an initial meeting, there's several coffees in between, and it's about a 6-month lead is what we build into new clients actually engaging us on a retainer basis. They might use us for a little bit of ad hoc stuff in the meantime, but there's certainly testing. But yes, once they're on board, it almost becomes a bit overwhelming, doesn't it? They're suddenly all this stuff they've been thinking they could have help with.
I found what's interesting is we've not actually spent a lot of time promoting ourselves. A lot of our clients have come organically or through referrals. So I think there's definitely an appetite out there, more than perhaps we'd expected there would have been. I know when I came on board, I thought a lot of what I'd be doing initially would be promoting the Lacuna business before engaging a lot with our clients. But, I came on board and hit the ground running, working directly with clients simply because we had that volume already.
Yeah.
And I think, Terry, to your question also, I do think that there is this sort of broader shift to the gig economy, and I know that comes with lots of its own challenges, particularly around workplace relations and things like that. But I do think that sort of transition in the economy has opened up people's sort of perceptions and willingness to engage with service providers and to outsource things that traditionally they would have felt needed to belong inside the firm.
And I guess in your case as well, you're really taking on that role of trusted advisor, aren't you, in the sort of services that you're providing, certainly in the executive coaching space, but in a lot of those things that are, business critical aspects that people are in a way, briefing out to you as well. So I suppose in that respect, you can kind of understand sometimes that relationship would build over time.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that what we have found is the sorts of services that people are more willing to sort of engage with and outsource is a very personalised, very tailored service. And that is because it's the trusted relationship that builds.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you've got lots more to say, and we want to hear all of it. And we've got a quick question here, so I'm just going to read it out if I may. Does Lacuna find that they are working more with women than men in the profession? It's a multi-part one, so I'll give you all of them at one time. Are there any themes in the different questions they ask, that is, in terms of men and women? And are there differences in confidence levels? And what advice do you have for women in particular who may feel less confident about their careers? And this may be one, at least initially, for you, Bronwyn, in terms of your coaching experience. So I'll just tag all those for you just once again. Is there a difference between working with men and women, and do they ask you different questions? Is there a difference in confidence level that you can observe?
Certainly. One of my favourite questions. How long have we got, Terry?
Yeah, no, take your time, Bronwyn, no problem.
Look, I guess to answer the first bit of the question, and you might jump in here as well, we very much saw Lacuna as a solution for women because it was our own experience that drove us to do this. But we were surprised when we launched that we have probably a good balance of clients across the genders. So it's not just a female problem, the work-life balance. And certainly when you start looking at some of the studies around lawyers and attrition, men recognise the work-life balance piece as much as the women. Yes, I see great differences between men and women generally in terms of confidence. I tell the story that I have a brother who's 2 years younger than me. I have 3 younger brothers. And my brother has a fantastic career, but I always say that we had the same career until I had children, and then his just skyrocketed and mine became Lacuna, which I love. But it's also a confidence thing. Like, I have seen what he can do compared to what I can do. And we grew up in the same incubator, so to speak. Like, there's no reason, but women seem to judge themselves very harshly, I would say, and don't always have the same suit of armour. So a lot of coaching work is around that, and the recognition that actually what they're doing is probably pretty good.
Absolutely. So shall we go? I know you got more to say. Can we hear it?
All right. Well, I think it's me to add to that. I think it's me.
On the confidence piece, you probably do.
Yeah, I do. I do see differences. Sometimes they are superficial. Sometimes women are just more open about it. That everyone often feels the same underneath. It's just that some people are more open about sharing it. And I think a lot of it comes to the backup that you have, what your sort of support networks are in terms of taking on a new challenge and the confidence to take on a new challenge. It's easier to do if you know you've got a good kind of support network and backup so that you can deliver on the challenge. And I think that's where you do see some differences sometimes between the women and the men. They know that when they take on a challenge that someone else has got to pick up the slack. So that can play into it. But moving on, we're going to talk now a little bit, I think, about what sort of problems we solve. So the first one I want to talk about is time, because we all know that lawyers are absolutely fixated on time. It's drummed into us from the moment we pop out of law school. But whether you fixed fee bill or you don't, your time is still your most valuable commodity, and you need to make the best use of it. If you're freelancing or you're in a small firm, you often haven't got a lot of leverage to drive your profitability. So your profitability does come down to you and your efficient use of your time. So that means you've got to set up some good internal systems, you've got to use technology well, and you've got to outsource your administrative functions so that you can actually have that time to spend on your fee generating work. So the outsourcing is absolutely key. And when you first set out on your own, and we fell into this trap ourselves, sharing sort of things along the way. You're really careful with your cash flow. You're careful with your expenditure commitments. You don't know how things are going to go. So you want to try and do as much, or you think you should try and do as much yourself as you possibly can. Often you do find over time that there are actually things that you aren't expert in, and it would have been better to spend the money initially and outsource those functions to someone who is actually expert in it and deliver you a better result for it. So it can end up costing you more in the end because you've used your own time to do something that you're not too good at. So that's an area where we would really encourage people to think about that earlier on in their sort of journey and really value their own time when they're making those decisions about what they will spend money on. The other area I think that we're all finding a little bit of a trap at the moment is working from home, which brings with it many benefits. The losing the commute, the daily commute, a very great one. But I think there is this real trap with that, because you've had this time freed up that you tend to then dedicate it to some other things which might not be the best use, like more housework. So I think if you're going through the journey and you're thinking, well, I want more balance in my life and I want to free things up, make sure you're freeing the time up for the right sorts of things and not the wrong sorts of things. So my advice is budget your time with as much care as you budget your expenditure. And so what we do at Lacuna is we really try and help people focus in on that efficient use of the time, and we really challenge them about how they are using their time and sort of testing their assumptions around that, whether it's administrative work that could be done by someone else, they might want to put someone on, whether it's managing sort of their acquisition of services that they need for their business, even finding premises, or whether it's some coaching around, you know, where their business development focus really should be. A lot of our effort is just that, getting that efficiency into it. And I think at that point, Gemma, I'm going to hand over to you. You're going to talk about communicating.
Yes, yeah. So we work with lawyers very much to communicate, as Alison said, your expertise. And your expertise as a lawyer or a professional is very much your currency. So it's why your clients come to you. However, we often find that defining and communicating that can be very difficult, particularly when you know what it is that you do so intimately. It can be really hard to explain to others or to convey the value of what that actually is. And particularly if you've been doing something for a very long time, the little voice inside your head can turn what others would see as the extraordinary into the ordinary. It can become difficult to identify what you do well, even though everybody around you can see it. So we work with you to find, and at the risk of sounding really cliche, but we work with you to find what your superpower is. We get a true understanding of what makes you unique and valuable to your clients. So this is always more than simply just your technical skills or the area of law in which you work. It extends to more of the soft kind of skills, I suppose, so your style, your approach, your values, and your personality. These are the things in your client's eyes that often differentiate you, but are also the hardest for you to articulate. So we know how to convey and sell your expertise in a way that resonates with clients and potential clients. Part of my role is very much, you know, content production and communication. So I often sit in the space between you and your clients to understand what your differentiators are and effectively act as a translator to define the message from the client's perspective. So shortly, Bronwyn will be talking to you about profiling, and it's this exercise around defining your expertise which often helps to chart the course for building your profile.
Thanks, Gemma. So I'm just going to build and talk a little bit about that extraordinary thing that Gemma mentioned. So I believe most people have done more than one extraordinary thing in their lives. And that extraordinary thing is that thing you didn't think you would ever be able to do, the thing that, as Gemma said, your superpower, that moment in time when you were a superhero, on top of the world, exhilarated when you could achieve anything. So just stop for a moment, close your eyes, and think about, when was that moment for you? Maybe you'd even like to share it in the chat box. But to help you remember it, the first thought that went through your mind, through your head, after you'd achieved that extraordinary thing was probably something like, oh, I can't believe that worked. It's often accompanied by a sensation of butterflies and a feeling of exhilaration. And I think for lawyers, it's very quickly followed by a feeling of utter exhaustion. So just think about that moment for you and think about what happened next. Because what generally happens is we don't record it. People tend not to keep diaries like they once did. We don't write it down. And like other things, time diminishes its value. So our extraordinary feat becomes something quite ordinary. I mean, we get to the point where we think, well, if we did it, surely anyone can do it. What was so great about that anyway? We don't talk about it, and it doesn't become part of our story. It's one of the most fun things we do here is uncovering those aha moments when people remember and think, yeah, actually, that was quite remarkable. And to see the look on their face is a really great thing. So we find those extraordinary stories, whether it's the story of your business or whether it's your own individual story. And those stories then become the foundation on which to build your profile, You tell your stories through your CVs, through your websites, you tell your stories in presentations and in speaking engagements. And we help you tell these stories in award submissions and directory submissions in the media, and whether that's traditional or social. Just a word of caution, don't be too hard on yourself about if you haven't told your own story. It's an incredibly hard thing to do. I'm the classic example of this because I think over my career, I have written hundreds, if not thousands, of profiles and CVs. Yet anyone who has looked at my LinkedIn profile or at my profile on Lacuna will see a classic example of not having done it properly. It's very hard to write about yourself. Alison, if only I knew someone that could help me do that.
It's really true, though, that people always write down their own experience and their own achievements. And I think because everyone sort of has this base setting built into them not to talk yourself up too much. So you just sort of go, oh, yeah, did that. And when someone else looks at it, it's really can be, you know, quite incredible what people have done, but it often takes someone else to draw it out and just sort of put it in the right context and tell it in the right way. So I'm sure we do have lots of superpowers out there, yet people just don't know about it. So I think I was going to talk now. And Terry, did you have any other questions that you wanted to throw in at that point?
No, but I do have some for you at the end.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll keep going. I was going to talk a bit about being on your own. We're sort of still talking about, you know, how we can help sort of solve some of the challenges that we see with people. And we've talked a bit about some of the not so good things about law firms, but one of the very great things about working in a law firm is the sense of collegiality that you have, and you're all working together for a shared purpose, and you celebrate your victories together and you commiserate about your losses together, and that's very rewarding and affirming for people. And what we do see is when people strike out on their own or they join a small firm, there can be a real sense of loss around that collegiality, and over time, it can become insidious for some people, just depending on what sort of support networks that they've got in place. And we've seen that people can become very lonely, or their confidence can start to slip. And that's a little bit about what Bron was speaking about earlier, that they can start to sort of question their skills and just sort of withdraw even further. And in one of my other roles, I've done some work with corporate psychologists about this, about sort of looking at the impact of isolation and remote working on workforces, particularly in the context of COVID and lockdowns. And the message from the psychologists is that the risk is very, very real, but there are some quite good strategies that you can put in place to manage it. And the two key things that they tell us are, number one is awareness. If you are aware of the risk, you're much more likely to identify it if it's happening to you or it's happening to someone that you know. So you need to talk about it, promote the awareness of it. And the other is maintaining the connectivity and putting some strategies in place to maintain that connectivity with people. And at Lacuna, we really focus on the connectivity piece, particularly with those of our clients who are working out on their own. And part of what we do is the regular check-ins with people, just, you know, how are you going? What are you doing? What are you thinking about this? Did you see that on the news? That kind of thing. And also some regular events that we do run for people, which they don't have to come to, but just we do try and have something on that people can come in and connect up with other people as well, because we do see that as really important to support people. And I think at this point, Bron, you're going to talk more about how we work with clients.
We are, which I just realised we forgot to put. I over-deleted the slide today, so we have a special extra on the problem that we solve, and that's clients, perhaps one of the most important. So no matter how you work or where you work in law, your career will actually be measured ultimately by clients and the work that you get from them. So whether you're starting out as a junior in a firm, you're building your first sort of client portfolio, or even if you have quite a large portfolio of clients that you want to add to, it can be hard to know where to start. And so we can help with that. And one of the ways we do that is to do some analysis to identify who are your ideal clients. What industry do they work in? What type of legal advice do they need? Are they likely to be relationship or transactional clients? Are you going to need a constant churn of clients, or do you have clients that you can build almost lifelong relationships with and work for them throughout your career? And then we move on and start with the number 10. Otherwise, we find it can be daunting. If you think you can, about the clients that are out there, it's almost really hard to know where to start. So if we start with just finding client number 1, doing a great job for client number 1, providing excellent service for them, while we're doing that work, we're also looking for client number 2, and we build our portfolio one by one. And as we finish a job for one client, do they have more work for us? Do they have anyone they can refer us to? Would they write a testimonial for us? It's about this constant build. And when we get to engaging client number 10, we celebrate, and then we start again. But to be honest, depending on the size of firm that you're working in and the leverage model that you're using, we can't have a vast amount of clients as a smaller practitioner. So by getting to that 10, you're probably getting to a point where you're going to have to make decisions about other aspects of your business. And we talk through what that will mean. The other way we work with Lacuna clients is to actually go along to their own, the meetings they have with their own clients. It can be really hard to constantly rock up to a meeting where you're trying to sell your services by yourself. As Allison said earlier, people, can be a bit of a challenge to talk about yourself. But if you instead ring up the client and say, well, would you mind if I brought my marketing person along? She has some ideas about how we might be able to work together. It's an invitation for us to come in, and we get to talk you up. We get to ask questions about their business, and we get to be part of your team in building that corporate knowledge about your clients. It's great for you, but it's also great for us because we potentially get to meet one of our next 10 clients. So the other way we can help clients build their businesses is through the Lacuna community. And Allison's going to talk about that just in terms of networks and referrals. And then I think we're problem solved for today, for Friday.
Hopefully. I did think a moment ago over there, Bron, when you were saying you can ring up and see if you can bring your marketing person. I thought you were going to say we'd ring up and see if you could bring your mum. Well, I don't know what it is. Interesting strategy.
My mum might be on there. She might take you up on that.
So just talking about sort of the community and the networking. Another of the great things about working in a law firm is you do have this ready-made network, and you do have a funnel for work referrals, because by and large, most people have some degree of sort of specialisation about the work that they do, and will need to, send some work to other people and rely on other people to send some work to them. And again, if you're striking out on your own, that can be one of the daunting things. It's a big factor in that confidence piece that we were talking about earlier, and you do see a bit of demarcation in confidence levels on that piece, that trust in yourself, that you can actually build a network. And what we see with people is that they can go out and they can spend a lot of time spinning the wheels. They join all of these groups and spend, almost all their days sort of going out networking, and then turn around and sort of actually do the client work at night that they have. But it can be a really haphazard and time-consuming approach to networking. And again, you will hear us keep hammering this, but you do need to be focused about that. You need to be efficient with how you use that time. And that's where we find that we can really help. We have a long history in the law and in industry. We've got a big group of networks. Our clients have a big group of networks. There is a real synergy in kind of harnessing those and helping put people in contact with each other who, they can be very useful. And it's the kind of thing that Terry does exceptionally well. So, making networking work for you can be tricky, but it is worth it in terms of your time efficiency. And if we haven't laboured that point of using your time enough, Bron's going to talk about it some more.
So just really quickly, and this is for us to finish off on, but this is one of my favourite slides that we have developed over the last little bit, is just to get that sense of the value of time and how you budget your time. So we all give up, and I do this myself. I think, oh, that's only going to take me a couple of hours. I'll do that. I'll just work through and do that. But we've put this slide up as an example to really think about what that hour or two is costing you, that you every day, every week. So here you can see that if you're giving up 1 hour if you work 3 days a week and you give up 1 hour of those days, that's what the time is worth. Depending on, we don't like to talk about hourly rates too much, but it is how we come back to valuing our time. There's significant amounts of money you're giving up every year. And 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, it really does build up. And so what we're saying is think really hard about what you're doing that you don't need to do, and come and have a chat to us, because to be perfectly honest, within that budget, you can access our services to help you along and at different stages in whether it's in a retainer or on an ad hoc basis. But it's just sharing that slide that and I do hope I got my maths right. It's not my strong point, but So we just wanted to finish with that. Terry, should we throw back to you or?
Absolutely. I have questions for you.
Excellent.
And I've got a little bit of time, so I just wanted to get to kind of the advice portion of these sessions. So fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. And what an amazing and interesting journey in terms of, where you came from and how you put this business together. And, it's another formulation of a legal business, helping legal businesses. It's just amazing. Love it, love it, love it. But I wanted to flip to the advice part of this, where I ask our folks to sit back and reflect on their own business and on their own business journey, and whether, having been there and done that, there are words of wisdom, and I'm absolutely no doubt there will be, in relation to what you discovered in terms of your business journey as well. So, as I said, I've got a couple of them, but one of them I wanted to ask you in particular was, as your business rolled out and has evolved, what have been your biggest business challenges, and did anything surprise you in a good or maybe a more challenging way? Good question, isn't it? It's a great question.
There have been so many which we'll talk about, but I'm going to talk about one at the very start, which was actually making a start and launching, because Bron and I had this idea of business in our heads for a while. We finally did decide to sort of make the move out of large law firms, and then we spent probably about sort of 9 months or so just testing the idea, working up, making sure it passed the regulators, road testing with people as to what sort of services they would want, and we kept waiting for it to be sort of knocked back at some point, that there would be some sort of problem as to why it didn't work, and it never did. We kept sort of making each hurdle and looking at each other and going, oh, okay, on to the next hurdle. And then it sort of got to this crunch point where we actually had to stop being lawyers and start being entrepreneurs. We had to commit to launch it, and it would never be 100% fully planned with a perfect trajectory. And we actually spoke to people who worked in the innovation space, did some design thinking, and we sort of took some lessons out of that about being 80% ready and just going out there, because you could design what you think is the perfect service, but turns out that's not what the market wants. So you've just wasted that time. And it was probably Bron who pushed it and said, look, we're just going out there, we're going to launch. And we did. And there were elements of the service that we did have to pivot, certainly in terms of how we were pitching our packages and pricing for packages. We found that people needed a much more tailored personal service. So we pivoted on that. But that was a key learning for us, which we felt we got right, because we did get out there, we did launch, and we didn't waste too long in the planning phase. So that was an early one. You've probably got a couple.
I'm just thinking about the website, because I think that's a great analogy with that. we've been thinking about it. We had this picture of our website and we pondered that for months, didn't we? And then the second iteration, I think, took us 4 minutes, about 5 changes, and we launched it. So we got better as we went along in terms of just getting on with it, making sure it's the best it can be in that moment, but then testing it before you sort of kill it with love, I think. So, yeah.
It sounds like you've also kind of really embraced that kind of sense of continuous improvement and agility, though, as well, right? That you mentioned, Allison, pivoting, but you've got to have an open mind set to do that, and then you've got to do it fast, right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, you've got to take some risks. And again, this was, for me anyway, this was a mental adjustment, because lawyers deal in risk. We are trained to point out risk to everybody and never make any decisions about it because that's someone else's job. And you have to behave differently. You have to actually say, yes, there's a range of risks. We can't know exactly how this future is going to go, but we've got a pretty good sense of it. We've talked to enough people. Now we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And you actually have to take some of those risks. And not everything works out. Giving yourself a little bit of leeway. We had a couple of things that, we thought would be good. We'd sort of bring in some capability that we thought we needed, but it didn't quite work out for us. So, you do have a couple of missteps. You've also got to give yourself the leeway for that. That's not a failure. That's not a black mark. It's just a learning, and you move on from that.
And I often think if you don't try, if you don't experiment, then it can't ever develop into anything because it never got started. So you've just got to overcome that fear of failure, don't you?
You absolutely do, and it's part of the fun. I mean, the failures, they're a bit of a knockback, but again, you take a calculated risk. You don't expose yourself too much, and then when you do pull it off, it is sort of celebrating that victory that we spoke about. It is quite exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Did you want to talk about the employment?
Yeah, Terry. One of the things we were thinking about this was talking about sort of bringing people on with you. So we sort of got to the point, I think, probably towards the end of 2019, where we thought, look, this has legs. We really should bring the more people on and see how we can grow the business. And of course, February 2020, we sort of thought, oh, what's this going to look like in 12 months? What's the world going to look like in 12 months? So we had a really good set of clients. We hunkered down with them. We worked really hard with them. And we just continued on. And then we really should have hired earlier. And that would be my learning. If you think you need someone, you probably needed them 6 months before. And that was certainly with Gemma. Gemma alluded to before she came on with we wanted Gemma to help us build and profile Lacuna. And I think we probably had 3 weeks of that. And then you're out working with clients. And we've got 2 positions we're looking for at the moment. And I'd say the same thing. We really should have started looking for them. But it's the confidence, like you're taking on people's lives, and it's a responsibility that goes with having people that you're employed. And if you haven't done that before, it does take a lot to sort of get you over that hurdle. But I think the thing we've learned now is do it quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in fact, it was a question that I wanted to ask you. How do you almost identify those tipping points? And I guess what you're saying is you want to. What does it feel? Is it an opportunity because you're feeling overworked, or because you can't get stuff out the door fast enough? I mean, what are the indicators or the red flags for those that may be in that position right now trying to determine that?
Well, in the last week, I'd say it's been an email from Terry Mottershead telling me to turn the computer off at about 11 o'clock at night. I should say we were lucky enough to be part of the Innovator Incubator last year. And that process for me was certainly a big part of that. And that goes back into having that space to think things through and people coaching you. And that was also when I just woke up one day and thought, this is ridiculous. Why are we not hiring the people? I can't do all of this in the way I want to. We need more people So,
and I think it's when you see opportunities coming up that you really want to take because you know they're perfect for the business, but you're a bit worried about how you're going to deliver on them because no one wants to take on something that you can't deliver on. So you've got to pace yourself. You've always got to be slightly over-resourced so you can deliver on the next opportunity. It's the only way that you build it.
You know, sadly, we've come to an end, and that time passed really quickly, didn't it? And it was just such an amazing conversation, and as I said, it's just such an amazing story, and I'm just delighted, Bronwyn, Allison, and Gemma, that you could share that with us today. And you know, from our point of view, and as you say, as being a member of the incubator, it has been such a delight to be able to watch your business grow. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing, and obviously I congratulate you on that. So thank you very much again. Thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciated you being here today, and thank you also for your questions. Really enjoyed those as well. If you're interested in this series or generally in the work of the Centre, please do follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, and you will find not just Lacuna legal providers, but also each of the folks that you've seen present today on LinkedIn and in lots of other places. And I know that they would be very open and delighted if you wanted to reach out to them to be able to chat with them, and lots of contact details that you can see there. So you'll find them in a whole bunch of different places, and I do hope that you'll reach out to them. So with all of that having been said, thank you very much indeed again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
thank you, Terry.